Welcome, everybody. My name is Louise Williams, and I am your host for this free interview series called Your Soul's Secrets Revealed. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Suzanne Clegg. And I've known Suzanne for the last 4 years or so when I was introduced to her work through Dr. Bill Bankston. And I was fascinated by what these two were up to. And I've been following her offerings through her newsletter over the years. And I'm so excited to have her on the line today. And before I introduce Suzanne, I want to tell you a bit about her history. Suzanne Clegg is a pioneer in energy medicine. 30 years ago, she started as a clinical dietitian in hospitals at a time when medicine was just beginning to acknowledge the importance of food with health. Then she became an acupuncturist at a time when most people had not even heard of it. She did 4 years of graduate school in neurophysiology. Then she became a sound healer and is on the senior faculty of the Kairos Institute of Sound Healing. With sound healing, her skills as a medical intuitive and shaman blossomed. About 5 years ago, while looking for the next challenge, Suzanne found it in her own backyard. She asked her longtime friend, Dr. Bill Bankston, to teach her how to cure cancer. He mentored her for a few years and taught her how to promote and monitor a person who wants to naturally heal their cancer. She's the only person that he has extensively privately mentored in his method. She has a private practice in Lynbrook, Long Island, New York, and specializes in cancer care, but she also helps any other health condition that requires a depth and breadth of knowledge and clinical experience in how to coax natural healing forces into action. Suzanne Clegg, I am so happy to introduce you. Welcome.
Well, hello. That was great.
Wow, you are just a real trailblazer.
Yay. That I am.
Where are we going to begin? Do you want to just jump right in and talk about what you're doing right now with people, and then maybe we can back it up and see how it unfolds?
Sure. Well, I have a private practice, and I see my private patients, so I work with people with cancer. Got a scleroderma person I'm really excited about. The people come to me for, like, if you can't get better other ways, you try Suzanne. And, I love it because I just put out, that I need the right people, and I can help them often.
And I recently watched a YouTube video of you and a recent patient that you worked with, and it was just absolutely so
Which
beautiful.
Which one was that?
It was a young lady. She was, oh gosh, it was a while ago since I watched it, but which one was that?
Cancer one?
Yeah, she had cancer, and I think
yeah.
she was a student.
That's so great, because now she just emailed me the other day. I think she got better about 2 years ago, and she just had another test, and she's still cancer-free. So that's so great. No chemo, no radiation.
Fabulous.
And she was all nervous, like, maybe it's coming back, and she was clean. So that was real exciting.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Wow,
Yeah.
what great work you're doing.
Yeah.
So I've got so many things I want to ask you, and I think our listeners would really love to hear about how you connect in with your gifts, with the spiritual, realms to get your guidance.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Well, I wasn't always. You kind of have to have the history of it. For the longest time, I was an acupuncturist, so I was working with energy, feeling it, and I would go out of the room, and then I would come in, and I would know if the treatment had worked or not. And I felt very proud of my intuitive abilities at that point. And I laugh at that now because it's so rudimentary, but that's how it began. And then I had this thing that I should call myself Spirit Gate. If I ever had a company, I would call it Spirit Gate. That's the name of an acupuncture point, because it seems that when people come to me, this gate gets opened, and they get information, and I get to piggyback on it and witness it too. But it felt like something happens in in the therapeutic encounter in my office that allows spirit to come into people. And for the longest time, I was very much into not being psychic. I really felt like that was a whole astral thing that wasn't professional. And I've since and that was actually a journey that I've been on, to embrace the fact that I do have all this professional background, and to basically come out of the closet and say, guess what, guys, I really can tell what's going on in your body. And and I can not only tell it, but more importantly, I can help you feel it and have your own personal relationship to it, so you don't have to believe me. You actually include in your awareness things that you might have been overlooking, things that are subtle, but that if I'm seeing them and you're seeing them, well, then there must be something to them. And so I basically, the way I connect is I say a little prayer. I open my heart to the possibility of helping this person and being available to use whatever in my life experience can help them. And I really try to avoid ritual and routine and really come there. And then I usually also try to invite in the deities or the belief systems or the philosophies of the patient that I'm with. So, like if somebody is an Orthodox Jew, I might privately bring in Jesus as a guide for me, but I don't necessarily focus on that. I really focus on God, because that's their belief system. That's the language that they use for that. So I really try to language it. And sometimes I do this out loud, and sometimes I do it privately. But even if I do it privately, I still try to super understand what healing forces are called in their world, so that I can invoke them for them, as a way of really respecting that it's their healing process. It's not my show. It's their show. And then the other way I learned how to do that and how I do that is by contrast. So at first I learned it by going out of the room and coming in and noticing, oh, it was very different and nothing really changed. And now what I do is I withdraw contact with the spirit world, come really into myself, and then I go back. I kind of do this back and forth thing, and so that I can tell what's me and what's not me spiritually, so that I can tell the difference. And hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. I love the way you said that, because then you can identify what is different with their energy system that is maybe staticky, or I don't know if those are the right words, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah.
And is it palpable to you? Or is it just a knowing?
Both. Sometimes my body feels it. Often my body feels it. Often I get pictures, and the pictures are either goofy or funny or paradoxical and things that I would never know to make up. And so that's like a signal to me that I didn't make it up, and that it's coming in. It's still symbolic when I get an image. Like if I get an image of a gold pot, I don't think a real gold pot's sitting there. I think that means like abundance or a pot of gold in some other way, Sometimes I get very literal things, but usually it's more symbolic.
And I understand that you've mentored with Dr. Bill Bankston, and what a privilege for you to have that close contact with him, because he's gifted in helping people heal cancer. And
yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with working with Bill?
Oh yeah, they were very frustrating. Because and I laugh because, oh my gosh, he really stretched me. Because I knew him for 20 years, and I would go to barbecues and meet the people he was curing from cancer, and he would tell me this silly technique that he does, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's just positive thinking. I do more than that. And basically my ego kept me from learning from him for about 20 years and 18 years. And so when I finally, Spirit guided me and said it's time, and it's like my biography was funneled so that was like the logical thing to do, was to take patients over with cancer to him and have him mentor my process. It was very, very, very frustrating for me because I basically had to unlearn everything I had learned as an acupuncturist and as a polarity person and somebody who can feel the energy fields. I basically had to pretend like I knew absolutely nothing because I didn't get the results that he got initially.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I laughed, because it was very frustrating, because I really had to examine every single solitary assumption and throw most of it away and then reconnect with it in a completely fresh way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've tried to teach many people what I do, and most of them already know it. And I'm like going, okay, good luck. That's what I did for 20 years. They already know all about healing, and I'm like,
mm-hmm.
oh gosh, that sounds exactly like me a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I have compassion for it, but it's like, there's a tweaky little thing I would love to teach you if you could hear it.
Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to Bill because at one point I was so excited when I read his book, Chasing the Cure, and I wanted to bring him to Vancouver because, we need this kind of work so much.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying on the phone that, most people that are healers don't want to use his method because they think that they're being selfish by using, thinking of the 20 things that they're pulsing through of the thoughts that they want to call to themselves.
Yes.
And so he, and he's such a scientist, it adds such credibility when you look at his background and then what he's pulled out of the hat that he uses that works. And
that's probably why we got along, is that I'm a scientist too. I had the 4 years of graduate school in neurophysiology, and people who look on the other levels at my mind, they say I'm like a mad scientist up there figuring out all this and that and the other. And I'm not. I really like to think a lot about what I do, and I feel like maybe that's my why I'm such a pioneer, is that I'm able to do all that thinking and then able to express it in language that a lot of people can't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the selfishness thing is, well, it was a revolutionary act for me just to think of 20 things that I wanted, because I was spending my life, taking care of others and trying to take care of myself. But like, what do I really, 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 really want? Deep down in my bones want? That I hadn't Bill gave me permission to do that, and it was hard. Mm-hmm. It was really hard, and it was a revolutionary act of self-affirmation of, oh my gosh, all these chains around me are completely self-made. If I can't even think about what I want, how could it possibly come to me?
Exactly. So we have these little kryptonite dreams, boxed in, that we protect from actually coming to fruition with our own belief systems. Yeah. And I know myself. Go ahead.
I was thinking, I had a Buddhist client help me. Every single client I have teaches me something. They contradict something that I already know, quote unquote know, right? And yet they're right. And what I learned from her is that in order to really, really surrender and let God do its thing, we first have to be attached. We have to know what we're attached to in order to let go of it. So by me really knowing what because if I want something that I don't have, like say the world is like this thing where at some level it's all present for us, so whatever it is that I want that I don't have, let's say I want a car. It's like the classic one, right? I don't have that car, my car is old and unreliable, and I want a nice, reliable one. But I don't have that. At some level, I do have that car, but I'm sort of thinking that I don't. And so by owning the fact that I really feel separate from that goal and let myself understand that, when I use Bill's technique of using speed, it's a way of using the law of paradox, of being attached and unattached at the very same time. It confuses the energy field. Cancer doesn't know what to do with it, and it goes. It's such a new thing to do that energy fields aren't used to supporting, that change can happen.
Now, what's coming up for me is I know exactly what you're talking about, but I bet you there's a whole bunch of people that are wondering, what are we talking about with the cycling and the 20 things? So
I'll tell you very quickly what that is.
Yeah.
So in Bill Bankston's method that he's researched with mice, and this is cured cancer in mice. This is like the doorway, the first step that allows you to get into a different vibratory rate or something shifts. And what you do is you think of about 20 things that you want that you don't have. You create images of them, and then you memorize these images, and then you start doing them faster and faster and faster and faster until, first of all, you have to let go of the fact that you don't want anything and you have to want. Then you have to let go of you have to get the image, the emotion in there. I'm screwing this. I'm trying to cram too much in. Let me back up a bit. First, you get the. Anyway, how do I condense this? First, you get what you want, and then you have to attach what you were really, really, really feeling with it. By speeding it up, you have to detach from the feeling. Mm-hmm. By speeding it up even more, you have to detach from the image. By speeding it up even more into the realm of nothingness, you have to detach again. And it's that point when you're doing absolutely nothing that that's when the tumors cool down, that's when the visions happen, that's when all this other stuff happens. And I know people that go to this still one spot. They just go there without doing all this image cycling. Mm-hmm. And what I feel happens is that you're limited in some way. And what the speed of Bill Bankston's method of rapidly twirling images around in your head and then letting that go even, it's like you have to go through these veils. And if you skip the steps, you're just pretending to be there, but you're not really there. Mm. Which gets some healing done. It's valuable, but it doesn't cure cancer, usually.
And I've tried to introduce this with my clients, and you think that as adults we have just a huge long list of things that we want for ourselves. Mm-hmm. But what I find is when people are introduced to this idea of finding 20 things that they really want to call to themselves without any attachment to how they're going to get it, people are they get stunned.
They're stumped.
They just like, what?
Yeah,
and that says a lot about our separation from source.
Yes. All these beautiful things that we would want to create for the world, and we don't know any of them.
Yeah, and at the same time, don't you find that it's this concept, this oneness, this, we're putting on this kind of costume of belief where I'm one with all and all this. But like you said a moment ago, if you're missing some steps, you're faking it, and you're not going to get in that, I don't know if it's like a zone of nothingness, or maybe my words are not,
it's hard to describe because it's not really a wordy place.
Yeah. And so on that note, what does it feel like when you're in that not wordy place that we can't find a word for?
It feels like I'm have you ever had like when I was a kid, I would hold yarn for my mom as she would wind it around, and I had to sit there and hold my hands still while she did it and talk to some grown-up. It was boring, but I had to do it. So it's not that I'm bored. I'm still connected, but I can be talking politics while I'm doing it. It's not my reverence. It's not my, certainly isn't my fervent belief. It's just that I know that I'm there, and I'm relaxed, sort of holding space for it. But if I hold space too hard, it interferes. Like if I get real fervent and I get really wanting, then I realize that my emotions are involved, and I turn my cycle on again, and I try to get to a place where it's really okay just to be there. And then what I do is I also sense it working, but I'm not doing it. So sometimes I sense a flow. Now, I can create a flow by just putting my hands in two places, and a flow will generate, but it feels the same, but it came from a different direction. So the flow that I feel, I didn't create, even though my hands were put in a certain place. It's like it comes from the spirit end. It doesn't come from the Suzanne Clegg end. And I can witness it. And then when it shifts, I didn't do anything to shift it, but then I can respond to it and say, well, maybe I should put my hands somewhere else now, or maybe I should do something else now. So it's like it's guiding me. I'm not making it happen.
Hmm. And how long did it take you to get to where you could easily cycle 20 thoughts of what you want to call to yourself?
Well, that's why I think I'm a really good student, because it took me 20 years. But most people can learn it because I had such resistance. But once I actually started, it was several weeks of hunkering down and practicing. And I find that the people that feel more powerful in the world than I did at that time in my life do it much easier. For me, it was like I was ripping away an old version of myself. It was, it was hard, but I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to learn from Bill if I didn't do this. And I also had a live human being that was relying on me to cure his cancer, and I had to do it for him. So I had a lot of resistance. I'm not a very good memorizer, and some people memorize things easily, and I don't. And I said, I don't care if it takes me 100 times longer than another person. I'm going to memorize my list. And so I was kind of stubborn and just did it anyway. But most people, it's a lot easier than it was for me.
And can you talk about when the list starts to show up? Because I remember talking to you on Skype a bunch of years ago, and you said it scares the heck out of you when things start showing up on your list.
Well, because it's so easy, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't struggle. I struggled memorizing it, and that was that was about as hard as it got. And then, like, whoa, like when I think on my list I wanted a fuel-efficient new car. I was driving like a 20-year-old car or something, and I wanted a fuel-efficient new car. So I imagined a blue Prius in my driveway, and, one showed up, but it was my daughter's boyfriend's dad's car. And so, wait a minute, I have to switch the picture so that it looks like my husband's getting into it. And then 2 years later, I had two fuel-efficient cars in my driveway. One was a complete gift, and the other was a good deal, and I'm like, wow, that was pretty fun. And that's, because we need transportation. We drive a lot in my family, so, yeah. And
then you just replace, when whatever is on the list comes to you, do you drop in the next?
Yeah, because it's very clear that the list is things that you want that you think you don't have. So if maybe that's why I've got 2 cars. I didn't take it off in time. I've got another one. Cute. There's 4 drivers though, so it's not 2 just for me. But anyway, yeah. So it's a wants list, and so if you don't want it anymore, then you shouldn't have it. And people get nervous. They say, well, I'm not sure I want that, and if I got it, I'm not sure. So you think, well, what do I sort of kind of want? Because as you get closer to it, you can tweak it, and you can say, wait a minute, I don't want, that. I want this.
And what I'm kind of watching in the background underneath this formula is, the old saying, be careful what you wish for or what you ask for. And I would imagine that a lot of stuff gets brought up for people around how their lives are going to change when they have the responsibility of being in their truth.
Right. Yeah, and that's what happens. I think that's a big resistance to learning how to cycle, is we're just not quite ready for that. Because we're really standing up for what we want to create when we do that. And some of us aren't quite ready to do that. We're still wanting to blame the world for not behaving, as the reason why we're suffering. And I was there, so I have compassion for that. But I'm glad I'm not there anymore.
And so do you find that cancer shows up in the form of something that we aren't listening to, or is there a global?
Sometimes.
Yeah, there's probably so many different ways that it shows.
I think there's as many reasons to have cancer as there are people, because the curing of cancer means, if you can think of cancer as like this is a picture, okay? Don't take it too literally. If you have like a person in a body and their soul is incarnated into that body, let's say that there's part of their truth that, for whatever reason, isn't there yet. And that's true of 100% of human beings, right? So to say that I first want to take the blame out of getting cancer. It's not that you had some emotional issue and you're not good enough and you have some flaw. It could be that some part of you is calling for a fuller part of you to come in. And when my hands are on hot cancerous tumors, I can almost feel the cells, because they're the person's cells. It's almost like they're reaching for them. So if my patient's name is Cindy, it's like the cells are saying, Cindy, Cindy, where are you? Where are you? And I do the healing, and the tumor cools down, and Cindy feels more like herself than she did before the treatment. It's almost like there's part of her returning to her so that she's more complete. And it's almost like the cancer is like something that just comes in when there's a hole, when there's something that's not really true happening, or I mean, there's a lot of not true things, until we're like completely enlightened, or I don't know what the right word is for that, but the soul wants to grow. The soul really, really, really wants to grow, and so then the cells start growing, and then they're asking for healing, which is why I can't kill the cells. I can't have chemo and doing it at the same time, because they have to be able to respond to the healing. You can't do that when you're being poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
You have
And
to be
can
able
you
to
just
respond.
touch on that a little bit so that people understand that you work specifically with people that haven't been...
Well, those are the ones I get the results on.
Yeah.
The life-saving results. I can certainly work on people that have had chemo, and they feel much better. And there's soul work that happens, and there's comfort, there's peace, there's many, many, many good things. But I consider it palliative, and I consider it an adjunct to whatever the chemo is. And I'm not opposed to chemo or radiation. I really am not, but they just don't work really, really well with what I do. Because I need cells that are actively metastasizing, that are really growing, so that when I connect them to what they're looking for, they can go, oh, thank you very much, and then they shrink. Wow.
And one of the things that fascinated me with what Bill wrote about in his book, Chasing the Cure, and correct me, please, if I'm telling this wrong, but he found that the mice that were not that were in the laboratory, that he was working on another cage of cancerous animal tumors. The mice that were in the room that he hadn't worked on, just by being in the field, would not take the cancer.
Right. There's all sorts of things. I wonder about that, because I feel like animals are different than people. I think they have like a group soul, and in some ways they're more, especially they're all biologically identical. So it's very interesting, and I'm not pretending to understand that whole effect of how he cured the placebo group. The untreated group also got better from cancer that was completely 100% lethal otherwise. So clearly they were connected in some way. And so I'm thinking that it had to do with the fact that they were it's almost like they were one soul that he was treating through one. It's almost like I can touch your foot and your breast cancer will cool down. That's my take on it right now that I'm getting. It could be anything, though. It's very interesting.
So I don't understand what you mean by that, touching.
Oh, so sometimes, like say I'm with a person and they have like a tumor in their breast. I might be at their feet. I might not be touching their breast where the tumor is, and yet the breast tumor will cool down. So the mice that weren't even in the same room, if they were in the same...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I mean, they had separate mice bodies, but in the same way they almost had the same mice soul in some ways, because I feel like animals are less individualized than humans are. And so, yeah.
I want to squeeze in as much as I can, so if it seems like I'm jumping in, this is so exciting to me, and I think maybe we might have to have another call.
I can talk for a long time.
I'm fascinated by the concept of the soul. And, can you just, talk about that? Because it's just so we're so linear. We have this little linear understand, or I do anyway. I'm you know, it just I every now and then I grasp like a tiny little 1 second vast thought, and then I get bounced back into this linear frame of what I think the soul is all about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like to consider myself a spiritual mutt, which means I really just borrow from all these different perspectives, and then I try to just phenomenologically see if one of these ideas explains what's happening. And so when I think of, there's the emotional body around us, which I would call like our astral body, and that's the realm of images and emotions, and in some ways that's soul, but that's not what I would call spirit, which is I think what you're calling soul, because all these definitions get so fuzzy. And to me, the spirit is like the enduring part that just is our uniqueness, and that's what runs the show at some level. And so that's why I can have compassion if people don't have, aren't as evolved as I am, right? You know, I know that and they don't. Because, but at one point I didn't know that and I had to get it. So there's a higher self of us that is not embodied, an unconscious part of ourselves that is sort of running the show. I know Bankston, he had a nice picture of it. He said, well, the pea brain is our consciousness, and then the rest of us is actually doing it, you know. There's this consciousness that knows how to, make hair and make skin, and if you get cut, it'll heal, and then it'll stop healing when it's just the right shape. But why does that not happen in cancer? What gets stopped? What information system is messed with in some way so that it can't, so that the growth doesn't stop? Because we have cancer cells in our body, all of us do, and they're just being gobbled up by our immune system because they're recognized as not in the right place. So what recognizes it? You can figure out all the biochemicals that do that, but what soul process recognizes us as who we are, and what soul process is missing if that's not happening? Or what soul process, maybe not missing, but what soul process needs to come in? Because I think some of the most amazingly highly evolved people get cancer. I don't think and also, really unevolved people do too, but I don't really think this is the first thing. I'll just take the blame away from that. You don't know what your soul's journey is supposed to be about, and you don't know what another person's is. And the healing of cancer is always so unique, which is why, one of Bankston's rules is you avoid ritual. No true treatments are ever the same. It's always so individual. And we don't know why the soul chose to get cancer. We don't know why all that. But the healing sometimes in the spontaneous remissions that people have, there's usually been some fundamental shift where they had to affirm who they are, separate from community. I can talk about this for a long time. I've studied the healing miracles of Jesus. It's like there's something that happens in a quote-unquote miracle where the person has to affirm something, and if they aren't doing it, somebody who loves them is doing it. There's a super, you could say, egoistic thing of affirming their connection to Source or their own self, their own reality, their own truth. And spontaneous people that have had spontaneous remissions, they feel more like themselves than they've ever been. And the people that don't get that have their tumors go away, I feel like they get sick again, and the cure is not permanent.
Is there something that we could do as a maintenance where we can check in with the truth of the part of us that we don't maybe know about? I don't know if I'm asking that right. Is there something we could do to help our adventure here, to not have to learn our lessons so hard?
Yeah, well, I think learning from joy is a really great thing, and that's why I really love this rapid image cycling technique, is because you have to think really hard about what it would be to live a joyful life. And that takes discipline, because you have to keep doing it, and you have to, if you haven't been thinking that for a long time, how would I bring in joy? It doesn't just happen at you, you know. You like, what would it be like? Do I want to travel? No, I don't really want to travel. I want to be home. Like, what is joy for you? What is bringing in, like, what we want in the world also wants us. So the wonderful creations that are waiting to be invented need an inventor, you know. The wonderful, beautiful homes that need to be decorated beautifully. Like, those homes were made by, it's like the beautiful things on a spiritual level want to come into the earth, and they need people to want them enough to make them happen. And so we have cooperation from the spirit world, and it's not just like ghosts on the other side. It's like, if, like, I can look at the room I'm sitting in, and there's a blank wall there, and I could say, what does this wall want? You know, and that's a spiritual act for me to ask the wall what it wants. And not to confuse it with the person, but there's something that this wall wants. And it wants to support me being in this room, and it wants me to support the process, you know, because that's what walls do. They protect. And I sort of anthropomorphize that a little bit. But anyway, I think I got off track a little bit.
Well, you know what I love about it? No, I don't think you did at all.
Okay.
What it brings up for me is there's this this confused idea that us wanting stuff or being materialistic of what we want to bring to us that will give us joy. There's this I don't know. There's almost a conflict that says we're wrong, and I don't know if this is just my thing that's coming up, but I would love to have all the things that I would love to have, but I don't have them. And then I might go into a story that I tell myself about why I don't have them, and then that brings my energy vibration way down. And how the heck am I going to call that to me when I'm having this conversation with myself that says I'm a bad person if I have what I want?
Yeah. So you see something that you don't have, and you want it, and you're bummed out because you really want it, and you don't have it, and it's very annoying or irritating or painful that you don't have it. So then what you do is you bring heaven to earth. So you've got this picture of something that you don't have. So let's say you're sick, and your body's not working right, and you know you're supposed to, like, I don't know, think more positively, but you don't feel very good right now. So that's the earthly thing, and you can take a picture of it. You know, it has a tumor, or there's an infection, or there's some physical thing that you could actually take a picture with a regular camera with. So it's not an idea of sickness, it's physical. And then you go up to heaven, which is the realm of ideas, and you bring it through the realm of the emotions with love, and you try to bring heaven to earth and say, what would heal this? What can heal this? And then we become very grateful for these discomforts, these things that we want, because they allow us to bring heaven to earth. And we wouldn't be bringing heaven to earth. We would just be floating around doing nothing, I think, or something, without some of these, about these transformations. And then you think, well, but I want to learn from joy. I don't want to learn from struggle. But I also think that when we bring joy in, we experience joy from contrast. So when something is healed, wow, that's so wonderful. When it was really rainy and stormy and now it's suddenly a beautiful day, that's wonderful. It's the contrast that helps us have that joy. And so there's like this back and forth between the not having, the healing it with bringing heaven to it, and then celebrating it. And it's a cyclical process, and it's like a vibratory thing that happens. And I just think with the joy, it happens faster. You see something that you don't like, you bring love to it, and it happens, and you go, that's great. I felt very great about that one.
I love the way you've brought that forward. I really received that. Thank you. Because I think what happens is those neural pathways, you know, they get these really deep ditches get formed of the familiar of not having, right? And then we just keep looping back into this. But what we're actually doing with this method is we're retraining ourselves to have a new neural pathway of joy and abundance and love and sparkly heaven coming down into our earthly plane. It's so nice.
and we're just almost grateful for that. I mean, I'm thinking of parenting, parenting is not about, I don't know, coziness nonstop, it's
sure.
about living, with your children and, I don't know, having all these problems, and you just don't want to be anywhere else because you want to be loving your children. You want to be there for all these little things, You want to be helping them learn how to walk, and you want to help them get dressed for their prom, and you want to, all these things, you just love them so much that you just love helping them transform and doing that. So it's almost like there's nothing broken about the whole human situation of needing to bring love to stuff. And it's really okay.
So if we can do that for us the way we do it, with adventure for our children.
Yeah.
Kind of a nice parallel. I like the way you said that.
Yeah. And the whole healer thing of like, we can't help ourselves. I think that's the challenge is to not confuse healing others with healing ourselves because it feels so good. And we don't know how to let it in for ourselves. But we need to learn that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome.
Suzanne, we're coming to the end of our call today, and I know you have created a special gift just for our listeners. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. This is a thing I wrote called Body Wisdom for Healing workbook. And, a lot of people come to me and they expect me to touch them and have their cancer go away. And I'm saying, well, that sort of happens, but it sort of doesn't happen. It goes through a natural process. And what this workbook does is it helps the reader or the person who goes through the workbook and does the exercises start to get a handle on how your body actually does come with an instruction manual of how to heal, if you know what to pay attention to. And so I lead you through some exercises of, having certain thoughts and then feeling in your body the body's response to these thoughts, and then sort of starting to claim your power to decode what your body's telling you all along. And just a little bit of structure goes a long way because, how in the world do I do that? Of course I can. But it just gives you a little step-by-step procedure that if you do it, you can I would spend like an hour or two doing this workbook, not 10, but not 5 minutes. And, it's a special time. You can light a little candle. And it's a journaling exercise basically, and it teaches you how to feel the wisdom of your body.
Nice.
And I guess that's what I do when I work with people. Their body shifts. And I say, "Do you feel that?" And they go, "What?" I said, "Your stomach just tightened up." And then we thought, "What were you just thinking, or what was I just doing?" And then we'll just cycle. "Oh, I just cycled, and my stomach went down again." And they start realizing, "Oh my gosh, my consciousness is totally affecting my body at all times."
Oh, amazing.
Yep.
So it's like our bodies is a natural biofeedback storybook for us to read.
Absolutely. You don't even need to do the little muscle testing thing. It's just right. It's already doing it if you know what to look for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Suzanne, and for all the beautiful work you're doing out there. Tell us your contact information, because I think you're going to be getting a lot of people contacting you. So can you just tell us your
Okay, so my web address is spiritgate.com, like spiritgate.com. My name is Suzanne Clegg, Clegg, and you can email me at info@spiritgate.com. But if you forget that, just go to spiritgate.com and all the contact information is there. And we will have a link for people to just easily get your workbook. And on that note, Suzanne, I'm going to bid you farewell and thank you once again for all your beautiful work. And thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.